All right. Hey, everyone. Hey, everyone. I am so glad that everyone could join us today. For those of you that are joining us in the webinar and for those that are on Facebook Live, we've got some really good information for everyone, a hot topic that I'm sure it's all over the news, okay? The CARES Act. It's something that you hear about all of the time, but not a lot of explanation regarding what the CARES Act is. I can't explain it because I don't know. I don't know fully what it is. I know a little bit about it, but it's better if we have someone that's an expert, someone that's a CPA. This is what she does for a living. So this is her. So who better than to explain the CARES Act but Nikki Winston, CPA. I'll get you to introduce yourself in just a moment.
Okay.
For those who don't know me, my name is Shannon Ellis. I am a real estate agent. My company is Shannon Ellis and Associates. We are affiliated with Williams & Co. International Realty. We are right here in Metro Atlanta, but if you have any real estate needs, doesn't matter where you are, I can connect you with someone that can help you out. So having said that, like I said, I know everyone's been hearing about the PPP, Payment Protection Program. Ooh, I can get unemployment because I'm a gig worker, or I've been driving Uber, or I'm a contractor, so I can get unemployment. Where's my stimulus check? Why did I get the stimulus check? What's going to happen? I mean, I get all these questions. I get it from my neighbor. And everybody knows that my husband and I are business owners. So we get asked, well, did you guys get this? Well, why didn't you get 100,000? Or why didn't you get this big amount? For one, we're not trying to go to jail.
Right.
Gotta be honest. And we want to, we want to follow the guidelines, but we want to make sure that our employees are protected as well. So if we've been hearing on the news, Nikki and I were discussing before we came live about all of the folks that have been committing fraud, and they've just been misusing the funds. Even though there's a lot of gray area and things haven't really been explained, there are still rules that go along with all of these stimulus programs that are out there.
Mm-hmm.
So Nikki, having said that, I want you to introduce yourself and then do your thing. Tell us all about this CARES Act and just how is it going to help us? How is it, what are the pros and cons? All that good stuff.
Okay. Well, first off, thank you, Shannon, for inviting me. I'm glad to be on with you and having this much needed conversation for our community in particular.
Yes.
So for those of you who may not know me, I am Nikki Winston. I am a CPA. My firm is the Winston CPA Group. We are based in Atlanta, Georgia. And as Shannon alluded to, even if you're not in Atlanta and you have a small business or you're a startup or a freelancer and you need accounting or CPA or tax services, I can help you from anywhere on this globe. And we partner specifically with small businesses to help them understand the story of their business through the numbers that matter, right? Not the likes, not the followers, but the money in the bank. We also work with small business owners on operational improvements, cleaning up your accounting and positioning your business from the inside out to compete in this market with companies large and small. So first and foremost, I hope everybody is doing well and staying safe, and more importantly, staying sane in light of what we're dealing with. It has been a wake-up call on many fronts for businesses as I think about the calls, the emails, the DMs that I'm getting from business owners, a lot of them who aren't even my clients, who are just looking for a CPA to say, hey, I need some money to stay afloat. They're looking for answers. What will the future of my business look like, right? So Congress enacted the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, which we know as the CARES Act. It was a quick yet very fluid way to get financial resources to small businesses, to households. And as you mentioned, Shannon, even our freelancers, contractors, self-employed friends who are usually excluded from this type of assistance from the government, right? So the assistance comes in the form of the business loans, the stimulus payments, the increased unemployment checks, the deferrals of tax payments, and the filings for both individuals and their entities or their business. I think the biggest thing to really start with is to talk about the filing deadline. So the normal April 15th tax deadline that people like me look forward to every year has been extended to July 15th. With the exception of partnership returns, most of the tax forms, the 1040s, the 1120s for corporations, the 709s for gift tax returns have all been extended through July 15th. There's also extra relief for businesses who may qualify for payroll tax credits, which is a huge benefit for companies who have a lot of employees, or forgiveness of the loan proceeds as long as the criteria are met. Obviously, we don't want any funny business or foolishness like you just alluded to, some of these cases that are coming out in the last week or so where people are blatantly abusing this program that is designed to help business owners stay afloat. People are using it for their own personal gain. So please don't do that. We don't want anybody in prison or facing any type of criminal sanctions because of everything that's going on. So the CARES Act, it's 800 plus page documents. Me and all of my CPA friends have spent a lot of time reading and sifting through the documents because it's so subjective. I mean, as accountants, we operate in the black and white world. 1 + 1 is always 2. It doesn't matter how much you argue that it's 3, right? So now that we're having to analyze, interpret these very gray areas, we're advising our clients, okay, this is what we interpret it to be, but this is subject to change next week because there's been so many iterations on criteria, on what you can use the money for, on the requirements for forgiveness. The SBA just released the forgiveness application last week, and there's already a bunch of questions about that. So obviously we can't go into the whole detail of those 800 pages. So for purposes of this conversation, I want to touch on some of those high areas that are those high impact areas, the paycheck protection loans, the economic stimulus payments, some of the other relief and resources that are available to small businesses outside of the PPP, because that's the one thing that gets the most attention, and it may not fit every business owner's situation. And as you and I talked before, getting PPP loan proceeds may declare you ineligible for other types of resources that are available. So a lot of the questions I'm getting from small business owners: how do I qualify? What documents do I need to provide for the application? Do I have to pay this money back? What can I use it for? So just really to delve into the PPP, since that's where a lot of the a lot of the conversation is coming from. The SBA has essentially guaranteed these loans at 100% through the end of the year. No collateral or personal guarantee is required, right? So small businesses, typically less than 500 employees, are eligible to receive the funding, which can be up to 250% of your annual payroll costs. If I just stop there, that brings about a barrage of questions. Well, do I consider my part-time employees? What about people who might be contractors? What about certain benefits that the company pays on the employee's behalf, i.e. 401k loan matches or just other fringe benefits? Do those factor, right, health insurance premiums, do those factor into the calculation? Now, fortunately for a lot of those small businesses who utilize a third-party payroll processor, the QuickBooks, the Gustos, the ADPs of the world, as a complement, they have provided a lot of these reports already for business owners to have them ready to go, to say, hey, we process your payroll anyway. We have these reports readily available to support you in applying for these loans. But a good majority of business owners do not outsource that task.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times the priority is, let's get people's pay calculated and make sure there's enough money in the bank for us to actually make payroll.
Mm-hmm.
So there is really no conversation to say, oh, we have this third party person who's already done this legwork for us. So that right there is the bottleneck for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of business owners who are trying to get the funding. They can't even get the applications completed because they don't know if they're using the right information.
Yes.
The other thing is, what is the loan used for? The loan proceeds from the PPP program are designed to fund your payroll or to cover your overhead costs. So your rent or mortgage on maybe a business office, or if you manufacture products, maybe a warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
But again, lots of documents to submit along with the application. So this is where the assistance of a CPA or an accounting professional would be fruitful for a business owner. And last week, again, the SBA released that forgiveness application so that if you got the funds and now you want them to be partially or fully forgiven, you have to go through another application process, which involves another set of documents and reports and just data to provide. And so just the data gathering and the knowing what options are available are some of the biggest hurdles business owners getting the funding.
It's overwhelming when you think about
Yeah.
all of the reporting that you have to do and keeping track of everything. I mean,
Right.
when I had a discussion, we use QuickBooks. It's overwhelming,
Yeah.
even though QuickBooks will categorize everything for you, but it can become overwhelming.
Right.
It really can. It really
Agreed.
it can.
Because there's one thing to input the data into a system like QuickBooks, for example, but then the next step is, did I do this right? Did I categorize this right? Is this an expense? Is it an accrual? Is it an asset? So if you have a non-accountant doing what I call playing around in your company's financials, who don't really possess the expertise and the experience to be doing that, then you could be potentially submitting bad information. And outside of PPP applications, are your books really in order as they should be? So that's really going back to step zero. That's the question to answer. Are my books even in the right place?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And you know what? Before you and I started, again, I was watching the news and they were saying, you touched on this, that the SBA, they're talking about revising, that forgiveness portion. I think right now, what is it, 75% of your payroll or that money that you get has to go towards your payroll. So now they're thinking about reducing it to 50%.
Right, because the question becomes, okay, what if I got the money too little too late and I've already had to furlough or lay off my employees? So now I can't use that money to the extent of 75% to try and make payroll because I've already let my people go because I've waited weeks, if not months, to get the money. And so it again goes back to the subjectivity of the CARES Act. And I get what they were trying to do. I mean, the goal was to get the resources and the money out as quickly as possible. And it speaks to the fact that people think about these large brands, the Walmarts, the Targets, the Home Depots, et cetera. But this CARES Act really speaks to the fact that small businesses are the nucleus of our economy, especially with the inclusion of the Uber drivers, the Instacart shoppers. Usually, if that opportunity dries up, you just have to hustle and find the next one. But the fact that they also qualify for disaster recovery loans and things of that nature that they wouldn't traditionally qualify for just speaks volumes to what small business owners mean to our economy.
Yes. I mean, we definitely keep that economy going. Especially the restaurants, just small businesses overall. We employ folks. I mean, and even if it's just 2 or 3 folks, it's still 2 or 3 families that are contributing to making that money circulate.
Right, right. And then speaking on the other components of the CARES Act, so the stimulus payments, and we
Yes,
touched on the extended tax filing deadlines. Once your business starts to struggle, that trickles over to your household,
yes.
right? And so if you're having to tap into your personal assets to
Mhm.
keep your business afloat, or you're getting this stimulus money thinking that, okay, I can pay my mortgage and buy more food, since I personally feel like I've spent more on food in the last couple of weeks than I've probably spent year to date.
Mhm.
So when you start thinking about those sorts of things, it's okay, the stimulus check is coming and people are looking at it as a way to float their household, but these business owners are like, I don't have any PPP money or any EIDL money, any economic injury disaster loan money. So I have to take my little $1,200 and try to pay my 2 or 3 employees. And so now you have these blurred lines where it seems like it's almost creating
Yes.
more of a headache for people, because then looking ahead to next year when you have to file your 2020 personal and business taxes, now is where you're going to see the effects of this stimulus check, because yes, you're getting it tax free, this, that, and the other, but now that's going to have to be represented on your 2020 return, and who's going to say how that's going to impact your financial situation. So
Yes.
there's just it's difficult to talk about them in isolation, because it's literally a package. And I touched on the EIDL, so let me talk about that real quick,
Yes.
because
Yes.
that's another one of the loans that's available under the CARES Act. And it's actually one that the mom and pops, the Uber drivers, the consultants, our self-employed friends can actually apply for.
Mhm.
But then there's another component. There's the $10,000 emergency grant that was supposed to be, that was, I don't want to say marketed because it came from the government, but that was publicized as, once you apply for it, you'll have the funds within 72 hours.
Mhm.
So now a lot of that didn't happen. I know people who applied for it weeks ago or a month ago, and they're just now getting that 10 grand. But then there's also, and this is where the CPA comes in, because it can get really complex and really hairy to say, well, if I apply for the EIDL, but then I applied for the PPP, do I take both? Do I take one? Can I refinance one into the other? What about the payment stipulations for the PPP, where it can only be used for certain things? And then you have the EIDL, which the the use of the funds are not as restrictive
Okay.
as they are with the PPP. So let's say if you have a candle making business and you need money to purchase more materials or more inventory, then you can use something like an EIDL loan to do that. But if you were to get PPP funds, you can't use it to purchase inventory. It's for payroll or to cover your overhead costs.
Yeah.
So you have to get with a CPA or an accounting professional to figure out, number one, what are the options available to me? Number two, what are the ones that I should be taking advantage of based on my situation? Because if you have, going back to that example, 3 employees, is a PPP loan even beneficial to you
Mhm.
if you have to calculate the payroll cost for 3 people on an annualized basis
Mhm.
versus looking at EIDL, where you may have access to more money, because the EIDL provides up to $2 million in funding for employees who have less than 500 employees.
Now, was that
So
EIDL, was that the one, that was the one, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that the one where they ran out of money early or?
no, the
Okay.
PPP is what ran out of money.
Okay. Okay.
And interestingly, and I'm glad you brought that up, because it started to get to a point where people were scratching their heads like, okay, so how do we define small business? If
Mhm.
you have the Lakers getting millions of dollars, if you have the Shake Shacks and the Ruth Chris of the world getting millions of dollars, even when they had access to alternative sources of funding,
Mhm.
meaning they can pick up a phone, call a banker, hey, I need $5 million.
Mhm.
The business owners that I know don't have those type of
No,
Rolodexes where they can pick up the phone and do that, right?
not at
So
all.
now it's like, did Shake Shack really need $2 million when that could have been dispersed to multiple business owners to help them stay afloat? So there's just so much subjectivity with this CARES Act, but it's just really important to break down what's applicable to business owners and to households so that they can not have to sift through all of these pages and know immediately, okay, I have a PPP loan available, I have the EIDL available to me, potential $10,000 emergency grant, the payroll tax credits. So you really have to, number one, understand your business and then work with somebody who can help you navigate through all of these different options.
Yes, yes. Now with that, I'm going to go back to that stimulus check.
Okay.
Because that one was a hot one. Is that something that, you may have touched on this, is that something that is going to come up next year, especially for those, just for regular folks, regular everyday folks? Is that something that they're going to have to claim on their taxes next year? Are they going to have to account for those funds that they receive? How does that affect them?
Yep. So essentially, what the stimulus check is really an advance of a tax credit that taxpayers were going to be entitled to for tax year 2020.
Really?
Right. So the other thing I read about it is that let me give you a scenario. So let's say that you and your husband it's you, your husband, and you have 2 kids. So the stimulus package is called for $1,200 per individual, $500 per child. So I'm an accountant. I should be able to add this in my head. So that's $3,400, right? So let's say when you file your return next year that your child has since turned 18, because it's $500 per child up to the age of 17. So if it got to a point where, okay, this child is no longer eligible, so instead of the $3,400 credit, you really get $2,900 when you deduct the $500 for that kid. So technically you would owe that $500 that you got in advance. They're going, the word is, as of now, granted, this might change next week or next month. The word is they're going to forgive that portion and they're not going to penalize taxpayers if they have a shortage, if they get more in stimulus checks than what they were entitled to as a tax credit.
Okay.
So then there's this conversation about the second round of stimulus payments, which I don't even want to touch on that because that's more fluid than the CARES Act. There's still conversations going back and forth about that. But essentially that's what it is. It's just an advanced tax credit on your 2020 tax return that if you are entitled to more, you may get it back as a refund. And if you actually owe money because your stimulus payments exceeded your tax credit, then the word is, as of now, that there's no penalty for that shortage, because that right there is a lot for the Department of Treasury to have to manage. If that you gave a stimulus check to everybody, and now you have to go back and recalculate all of that, determine who paid more and who paid less. So you think about, from a cost benefit standpoint, is it worth it for them to go back and analyze millions of checks that they issued just to try to recover $500 per person? You know what I'm saying? So that right there is, which I know people were happy to get it. And my husband showed me this post on Facebook yesterday that just had me just hollering, laughing, where this guy said, I'm pretending like I'm okay, but deep down inside, I really want another stimulus check. And it just made me holler, because people are looking at it from that standpoint of, yeah, okay, I'm getting this money from the government, tax-free, just for being who I am, or just for filing a return in 18 or 19, not realizing that in 2020, you're going to have to face the music with this stimulus check, depending on what the outcome is going to be.
See, you know what? It makes sense, because, no money is free money.
Right.
It is never
my point money. Exactly.
But
yes.
I had no idea that is something that's going to be, it's a credit that they're going to get anyway. Right. For the next tax year. I think a lot of folks are going to be surprised when they see those reduced tax returns. So there's going to be a lot of explaining that a lot of tax preparers are going to have to do
right
here when it comes to that time. So
And see, the other thing that a lot of business owners are coming to me about is, what do I do now? I
Mhm.
mean, it's obvious that this pandemic has required a lot of business owners to
Yes,
come face to face with their business to
yes,
figure out disaster recovery. Do I have an insurance policy for my business? Do I have adequate insurance? And what are the mission critical things that I need to get done in my business? The pivot for most companies is you're accustomed to being in this office environment.
mhm,
You might be printing checks or just doing things on a normal day in
mhm,
the office. But now that everything is shut down,
mhm.
um, what do I do? How do I pivot? Do I can't even talk. Do
Mhm,
me and my team
mhm.
have the capacity to convert what we were doing in our office environment in our homes? And I'm
Yes,
thinking, for example, again, these small companies who might be printing checks to send to vendors, printing checks for employees. Do you have a check printer in your living room or at your house where you
mhm,
can keep that going? Because what happens if you can't pay the vendors? They're trying to manage their expenses and cash flow now too. And so that might, jeopardize your relationship with them. They might say, well, if you're slow paying now, we can't ship all the inventory you want,
mhm,
or we can't give you a payment discount. So there's so much to think about. And our businesses, people of color in particular,
mhm.
we are so in a rush to get to market and to launch a product, which nothing wrong with that. We work hard. I think we have billion-dollar ideas, but the thing that we neglect is taking care of our back office and building
Mhm,
our business from the inside out. So if you haven't
mhm.
gone through the exercise of documenting your processes, of establishing a disaster recovery program, now you're
Yes,
doing it, but you're doing it in a reactive mode
yes,
versus being able to get in front of it. So
yes,
that's a lot of what people are concerned about now is my business even going to survive this pandemic? Because I think I saw, um and my Yahoo Finance is on. I think that's even where it came from the other day, is maybe have 50% of restaurants won't even reopen
yes,
after this. And
yes,
so regardless of what industry you're in, that's a conversation that needs to be had specifically by those business owners who, like I said, launched the product did well, but you don't have repeatable processes written down. You don't understand what your mission critical tasks are that have to get done on a daily basis, whether you can go into an office or not. And
mhm.
so, again, this is where the CPA comes into play, because beyond the debits and credits on a financial statement, we're talking to you about controllership, about what your plan is going to be moving forward. A lot of companies who are trying to grow and scale their business, or some of them who probably just hit their stride right before this happened, now they're back to square one. So when we get to maybe this time next year, and we're thinking about COVID-19 as an integral part of our new normal, now that you're going to a bank to apply for a loan and you're trying to compare your financial statements to say, well, in 2020, we know that the pandemic happened, this, that, and the other, but what other collateral or what type of personal guarantee can you bring to the table to support this loan? Because based on these financials from 2020, you can't support this loan. So there again is another ding
Mhm.
on the Black business, who we're already disadvantaged trying to seek out alternative sources of funding. And now this is just another obstacle in our way. So now, if any, is the time that we need to really start nurturing our businesses
Yes,
and developing them from the inside out, to say, what if the flu season turns out to be even worse than ever because of COVID-19? Or what if, because of the business or the industry that I operate in, that I can't get back to that maximum revenue level? So what do I do as an alternative? Is where our mindsets need to go at this point.
yes, yes. And you know what? I'm glad you pointed that out. There are a lot of businesses, I believe, that are just not going to come back
Right.
at all. at all. I mean, we've seen it. There's a certain group that I follow, and they document all of the restaurants around Metro Atlanta that are just closing down. And from the looks of it, before COVID-19 happened, they were really busy restaurants. I mean,
Yeah.
really busy, great reviews, but they are not coming back. And just think, how a lot of people are 2 or 3 paychecks away. Oftentimes the same holds true for a lot of small businesses.
Right.
You're a couple of checks away from closing those doors because there's
Yep.
no plan in place, no disaster plan in place.
Right.
And so
Had to pivot and was not ready for the pivot at all. And so there are a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners still trying to catch their breath, like,
yes.
okay, can I make payroll? Can I cover this and that expense? Can I still afford to pay my vendors? And so there's a lot going on, but I will say that 99% of companies, large and small, are in uncharted territory.
Yes.
And a lot of them don't have anything built into a DRP, a disaster recovery plan, that deals with how to shift the business in case of a global pandemic, right? And like I said, the businesses that were already struggling, or those businesses who feel like, okay, first quarter was a great quarter, and now they've come all the way back down and been literally shut down because of the pandemic. What do I do? Can my business sustain this? And we have to start having these conversations about how to remedy these problems for our business. Because as a CPA, and one of the reasons why I work with the clients that I do, the small business owners, the startups who have these $billion-dollar ideas, but have no idea how to really execute those. So we work, of course, on the accounting and the tax and the strategic planning side, but that operational excellence is so important. And what puts Black business owners in particular behind everybody else is that we do not have access to this information.
Yes.
And we don't understand the ins and outs of financing. And we might be so excited just to get the financing. We're not reading the fine print. We just gonna sign away, just because we know that as soon as we sign this paper, that deposit is gonna hit the account. We're not paying attention. We're not thinking about what the downstream effects are going to be. Even from an accounting standpoint, if you get the PPP loan or any other source of funding, how do you record that in your financial statements? If you have a payroll tax credit, or you're deferring your payment for 3 months, you're taking advantage of everything that the CARES Act gives you, how do your financial statements look? Do you have an accountant or a bookkeeper or somebody who is well versed enough to even accurately present your financial statement? So there are just so many things that we have to think about, and we have to really shift the conversations and not be afraid to reach out and have those conversations so that we can move forward and not get left behind.
Exactly. And that is why I thought it was so important to at least have this discussion today. Because like you said, everybody has $1 million idea. Everybody wants to be self-employed. And for those of us that are, it's a great thing, but your finances have to be in order. I mean, even when it's someone that's coming to purchase a home, their finances have to be in order. You know what I mean? So it's really important to it's going to come back to affect you in the, later on down the line. So this is a really important conversation, because you hear so much about this in the news and nobody really explains it,
Right.
It's just, here's the money, here, take it.
Right.
And people are taking it. Let me ask you something about the a lot of the gig workers, and how important is it for them? I know how important it is. Why don't you explain how important is it for them to, at least, even though they're gig workers, they're Uber driving, how is it important for them to properly document that income? Say, for instance, if they are self-employed as well. You know what I mean? That income.
Listen, Shannon, if we don't answer no other question for them, I'm so glad you brought that up. Because here's the thing. As we talked about with the EIDL loans, that gig workers are eligible to apply for those loans. but you're also really competing with other small business owners who felt like the PPP isn't ideal for me, so I'm going to go this route. So it's not like it's a pool exclusively for them. They're just in line with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that some of them can potentially apply for unemployment insurance depending on the structure of their business. But jumping back to the loan, because again, small business owners, the gig workers, the freelancers are typically excluded from these sorts of things. If you apply for the EIDL loan or really any other type of assistance as a gig worker, the question becomes, why were you a gig worker in the first place? Are you driving for Uber just because you need extra money to pay your light bill, or you're trying to pay down some debt? And so you leave your 9 to 5 and you go drive for a couple hours, you make extra money. That you're not really running a business. You're more so just trying to upkeep your household. So you probably wouldn't qualify. On the other hand, if you're an Uber driver and you're using an accounting system and you're keeping your receipts and you're trying to figure out the best time of the day for you to drive to maximize your profit, now you're thinking and operating and you appear as a business. Therefore, you will probably qualify for some additional resources that you might not traditionally apply for. So that's the other thing, is the lack of knowledge. And people feel like, well, I drive for Uber and I get paid $300 a week, so I'm gonna just go apply for the loan and this, that, and the other. Not really understanding you have to be in this to do a business, not just to say you want to keep your lights on.
Yes.
And so that is a huge factor in whether or not people are able to get the funds. And on a personal note, I have personally been in my house since March 10th. I am not playing around with this pandemic. My husband, thank goodness, will go out for me if I need something, but I have been getting my groceries delivered, and I'm surprised at the number of people who are still operating. The Instacarts of the world, the well, not so much Uber, but Uber Eats. And the fact that people are still trying to keep things going in spite of this pandemic. And I'm a CPA, so it's only natural that when they drop it off, I'm like, I wonder if they are doing this just for extra money, or if they still are trying to operate as a business. Because I know people in the gig economy who literally establish LLCs or S corporations, and all they do is drive, or they work for Instacart because they're trying to build up a business. And so that is an important factor in applying for these benefits, if you will, as a gig worker or a contractor, because if you don't have that documentation, it's going to be difficult for you to take advantage of these programs.
Good. I'm glad you pointed that out. Because I had one scenario where a person, they work a full-time job and they have a great income, been on their job for years, but they have something that they do on the side just for a little extra money. And they thought that it was okay because unemployment is available and all of these other things are available, that it's okay to just apply because free money is out there.
Right. So, and really, I think that just really from a strategy standpoint, I know when I heard about like the Shake Shacks and the Lakers, I'm like, how dare they take this money? But there were a lot of these conversations like, okay, how are we going to navigate through this pandemic? And a lot of them probably said, we're going to apply on a just in case basis.
Yes.
Because we don't know what's going to happen next week or next month. But if we meet the criteria, why not apply? And I mean, there is a global definition of a formal definition of a small business that doesn't always align to what we think as the mom and pop or the girl who's making candles out of her kitchen kind of thing. There's a broader definition to small business. And it can include companies whose revenues are millions of dollars annually, just because they still fall within the IRS's definition of a
Yes.
small business. So on the surface and the way it was reported, it looks like, okay, that was shady. Why did they do that? But technically, they fall within the definition of what the SBA and what Treasury considers a small business. Now, was it right? Not really so much. But again, it goes back to be informed and
Yes.
having access to the information to know how it works for you. And one analogy I'll bring up is, I remember last year when Amazon reported their earnings,
Mhm.
one of my friends texted me like, how did Amazon make all this money and they didn't pay any taxes?
Mhm.
Information.
Mhm.
Information.
There you
That's
go.
all it is.
Information. That is all
Yes.
you need. Once you know, I'm a firm believer, once you know the rules to the game, then you know.
Right.
Then you know.
Exactly.
Once you know those
Exactly.
and you get those rules by reading, reaching out, um,
Yep.
just reaching out to everyone involved, or reaching out to the experts. That's how you learn those rules. Bring
Right.
someone that's a player in the game, and then then you can get by on some things. One more question
Yeah.
I do want to ask you:
Okay.
unemployment. Unemployment. So I've been hearing folks saying, "Oh, I make more on unemployment than I do at work. If I go back to my regular job, why should I go back to work? I'm making X amount of dollars every week. How is that going to affect that person if they don't go back to work? How is it going to affect the economy? Should they have taxes taken out of that unemployment check?
Mhm.
What's going to happen when it's time for them?"
So, first and foremost, absolutely have taxes taken from unemployment. There is an option where applicants can select that option to have the federal and state taxes withheld, which is take anything away. But again, the downstream effect. When you file your return next year and I'm hearing people getting what, $1,000 a week? If you're getting $1,000 a week tax free for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and then you go to file your return next year, you're going to have to pay the taxes
Mhm.
on that money that you collected. So if there's an option to withhold the taxes now, absolutely, positively do that.
Good.
Now, as far as going back to work, now I'm a numbers girl. If it don't make money, if it don't make numbers, it don't make sense.
Hmm.
If you're working at a job where you're making $10 an hour,
Hmm.
right, and you take home maybe, I don't know, $600-700
Hmm.
uh, every 2 weeks or so,
Hmm.
and now you're getting double or maybe triple that on unemployment, it's like, on one side, the argument is, how do you expect people to go back to barely making it when, for some people, this unemployment is probably helping them catch up on bills, keep
Yes.
food on the table, and not have to struggle in a manner that they're accustomed to, waiting for a paycheck every week or every 2 weeks.
Hmm.
But then, as we said before, all good things come to an end, and you're not going to be on unemployment forever. So eventually, you're going to have to go back to work
Hmm.
when your benefits dry up.
Hmm.
But then, what kind of damage to your brand have you done by refusing to go back to work? So
Yes.
what type of new obstacles are you going to encounter when it comes time for you to go back to work, to the same employer or even to a different employer? And while we're talking about this, I do want to touch on real quick the offline conversation me and you had about paying your bills.
Hmm.
Because some people are like, this is some free money. I'm gonna ball out. I'm gonna buy some extra pair of shoes. The Last Dance been on. They've been dropping Jordans every week. Like, don't spend the money going to buy Jordans. You still need to pay your bills, because, and I mean, you as a real estate agent, if you're somebody who has this aspiration to become a homeowner, and you feel like after this you want to go out and purchase a home,
Oh,
Well, what have you been doing with your bills since then? Have you taken this stimulus money and paid off those collection accounts on your credit report? Have you taken a forbearance on a car payment or maybe on a mortgage? Which I have told clients, look, if your creditor offers you a forbearance, take it,
mm-hmm.
but do it and keep paying your bills.
Yes.
Meaning, if you get to a point where you're working and you lose your job, then at least that forbearance is already in place.
Mm-hmm.
But don't get it and then just start playing broke to say, oh, I'm not going to pay my mortgage for 3 months because they said they were going to give me a forbearance. A forbearance and a forgiveness are two different things. It just means that you don't have to pay it today.
Mm-hmm.
But contractually, when you sign those papers, you obligated yourself to pay it. So they might not get the money from you today, but they might get it 3 months from now or a year from now or whatever. And so what I don't want people to do is to put themselves in a far worse financial situation. And if your mortgage is $1,000 a month and you take a 3 month forbearance, that means that, and this is where the communication and the reading needs to happen, that is your creditor putting those 3 payments to the end of your loan or just to the end of the summer? Because if they put it due 3 months from now, they want all that. They want $1,000 for the last 3 months plus whatever you're going to be due going forward. And so to cry broke and say, I'm going to take advantage of this forbearance only to put yourself in a more dire financial situation is really going to just undo everything that you were trying to do. So back to those who want to purchase homes or those who want to scale their businesses, because now we might get to an environment in business where you need a business loan. We know that the financials aren't as strong because of the pandemic. So now they're looking to you to personally guarantee this loan. So if you're 3 months behind on your personal mortgage and your credit score has gone down and you don't have money in the bank, then put yourself personally and your business at a disadvantage. So if nothing else, keep paying your bills if you have the capacity to do so, so that you're not left behind when these credit markets tighten and when these I don't know what they're called, the subprime loans. So it used to be you need a 580. Well, now you need a 620, and then you need a 680 or a 720. You need to make sure that you're not locked out of the credit market when the time comes when you really need some money.
Yes,
So
it's coming. I mean, I think what a lot of people didn't realize, just the fact that they even called their mortgage company and inquired on a forbearance. Some mortgage companies were putting that mark on your credit or in your file. And so it does get reported to your credit. That industry is ever changing as well. You know, some of those rules, because I think when they made that decision to offer the forbearance to some homeowners, they didn't think it all the way through. But now we're 3-4 months into this thing. And so everybody's wanting their money, but the situation is still, we're still going through this pandemic. So that is ever changing.
Right.
So you're right. Just continue to pay your bills. We are, if you need a break, if you're going through a hardship and you need that extra little help, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. But don't just take advantage, because it is not free money.
Right. It is not. And thinking about it from the business's perspective, from the mortgage company or the car, whoever has your car loan, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll give you a forbearance for 3 months, because again, they know that you signed on the dotted line to pay them this money no matter what. And so they can you're still accruing interest and finance charges in some cases. They might waive a late fee or two, because late fee income is very subjective anyway, right? You can say, I didn't even get the statement. Why are you charging me a late fee? Okay, we'll waive the late fee, because they know that they're making up for that late fee and the interest and the finance charges that continue to accrue on your account, even in a forbearance in most cases. So going back to the $1,000 mortgage example, if you get a forbearance for 3 months on $1,000, that's $3,000. But then you have to factor in the extra $100 or $200 that's sitting on your account in finance charges. Again, another reason why you can be putting yourself in a more detrimental financial situation, why? Because you're trying to play broke.
Yes.
So it's important to look at it from that side too. And then eventually, as these companies are giving these forbearances and making it okay for customers not to care, even though from the revenue perspective, they can still recognize the revenue. Now it's like, we haven't had any cash flow for 3 months. We need our money. That's why you don't have to pay us $1,000 in May, June, and July, but come August 1st, we need that whole $3,000 plus
Yes.
the finance charges.
Yes.
And so going back to information, not really thinking through and understanding what's going on is where I want us to get out of that mindset of thinking that just because it's a government benefit that we can just jump on it and ride the wave. No, use that money to elevate yourself for when we come out of this.
There you go.
You know what I'm saying? If you know that you have not paid that utility bill from 2015, or that collection account is sitting on your credit, and I mean, not even to go off on a tangent, you can pay off a collection account and easily get 50 or 100 points on your credit score just for getting it removed.
Yes.
And so I just really do not want us to fall into or fall further back in, I'm going to ride this wave, I'm going to collect this unemployment, this, that, and the third. And then you find yourself locked out of the new normal once this is all over, because you got Jordans and this, and this, but you still got a 540 credit score. It's like, use this opportunity to elevate yourself, to elevate your business. If nothing else.
Yes, I am so glad you said that. Use this opportunity to elevate your business. So there are a bunch of takeaways. For one, we know that just because they're giving it to you, it's not free.
Right.
And if you do receive it, like you said, use it to elevate your business. Put yourself in a better situation. I mean, every little bit. You know, you want to do that. Don't go out and buy the Jordans and buy those material things that are not going to mean anything, 3-4 months from now anyway.
Right.
The income that, which I didn't realize, that stimulus payment, you're going to have to pay that back in some form or another, whether it's through
yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Government money is not free in no form or fashion.
Yeah. So I have anything else you want to add? Because we've been on, wow, this has been
almost an hour. Yeah.
Yes, because it is
That's
so
crazy.
much information.
It is. What else would I say? So the other thing I'm thinking about, and I'm thinking about Zoom, because since everybody has had to pivot, now companies have also been like struggling to figure out, how do I get the employees connected? How do I share files? How do I do this, and this? And so I'm thinking about Zoom because they've seen an uptick in usage, right? Both from companies and from schools. Because my kids I would be in my office on a call, and my kids are in their room doing digital learning via Zoom. And so until we know what I hate to say new normal, I don't like that phrase. Until we know what our environment is going to look like post-COVID, a lot of these temporary solutions that we put in place to say, well, we'll just use Zoom for now till we get back into the office. And now it's like, well, we might not get into the office until the end of the year. So are we going to have to stop using the trial version of Zoom and invest in a real solution so that we can keep the business going? And so when I say use these funds and these resources to elevate yourself, think about if you need to, at least from a technology standpoint, invest in some applications, some platforms and things to make sure that you can keep your business going, because there is the uncertainty. Even if you do go back to your office and you had maybe 20 employees who sat in cubes, maybe now they can't sit in cubes because they got to be 6 feet apart. So there's additional investment and costs that have to be incurred in order to comply with this new environment. And so don't be so quick to blow money on unimportant things, because we don't know what we're going to have to do to permanently shift the way
Yeah.
that we do business.
Yes. And I do think it's going to be a permanent shift. I really do.
Yes, agreed.
It's just the way it is. It's just,
Agreed.
it is just the way it is. So, oftentimes when I'm out in public, I don't always wear a mask like I should. And so it used to be, when you would see people, when this first hit, and I would see people wearing masks and gloves and just like full PPE, and I would think, oh my goodness, they are really taking it to the extreme. And so now when I'm out in public, sometimes I don't always wear my mask, but I noticed that a lot of places of business will not let you in if you don't have a mask on, if you don't have
Really?
gloves on. Yes.
I told you I haven't been out. And when my husband was going out, I was concerned, like, you need to cover up. He's like, babe, I got a mask in the car. I said, okay, I'm happy about that. But I had no idea that they wouldn't let you in without one.
There are some places that are like,
interesting.
Meet you at the door. And luckily my husband and I will keep, masks, we'll keep things in the car. But I mean, what do you do? Or you have to wait outside, which I wasn't a fan of that at first. I was not a fan of that at first, but now there's a line outside at some places. So it's just,
interesting.
some things that we're all going to have to get used to, especially going into the winter months. It's just what it is. So you're right. Invest into some things that's going to carry you through until we all realize what does the future really hold,
Right. And then the other thing is, everything comes down to information. There are so many companies, Microsoft, for example, I think they're providing 3 months of their free service, because I actually really like, we're not sponsored by anybody. I know we're on Zoom, but I like Microsoft Teams as far as having meetings, sharing files, and integrating it into your calendar, because I use Teams. And now if I have a meeting that's taking place in Teams, I can just go to my calendar and click join, and then it puts me right into the meeting versus having to go through Zoom, find an app, find a meeting ID, all those different things. And so there are companies who understand what's going on and what we're dealing with, and they are trying to be resourceful. And so even outside of the loans that are available under the CARES Act, there's a number of other companies. Sarah Blakely from Spanx, trying to think, I had like a list of companies I made where I was keeping track of those who are providing other small business loans and things for companies. So you don't necessarily have to go through the PPP process or any of the SBA loans. There are other entities and companies and individuals who have loans, who have resource centers, all these different things to help business owners stay on track. Because like I said, small business is the nucleus of this economy. And we are really starting to see that come to fruition. So anything that a company can do to maybe offer some free services for a few months, reduction in like subscription fees. I know some of the things I use in my technology stack are like, hey, do you need to suspend your service for 2 or 3 months? We're here for you. We get it. And so definitely taking advantage of those is helpful for a business as well.
Yeah, it has been. I'm glad you mentioned that. Everything that I've subscribed to, it's, we'll give you this 3 months of subscription for free, or we'll cut your cost in half. Take advantage of those. It's not going to affect your credit. It's not going to affect the services that you're receiving. Take advantage of it.
Right.
You know what? I think Facebook was offering small business loans as well. I kept seeing a banner.
Yeah, I saw their program. Yep.
Yeah. So, lots of resources out there, guys. I am so glad that we were able to get together and bring this information, because I felt it was so important. So important. Because all of this money it's out there, and it seems like they're just handing it out like candy, but you're going to have to pay for it in the, come next year. You're going to have to be accountable. It's not free money. So I at least wanted everyone to know what their options are, what they're into. So anything else you want to add, Nikki,
This is what
before we
happens
wrap up?
this is what happens when everybody's home.
That's okay. I had to have a speech with my family. Like, look, I had to tell my stepdaughter, like, look, please no yelling. And my husband's like, yeah, no yelling, no loud talking. Had to tell my son, do not knock on the door. You know.
Right.
So I had to
had
have
a call earlier. My daughter was asking me a question and got to the point where she popped onto the video. Hello. My son just came in the house. He's like 2 inches from the video, but as a takeaway, I would just say, just definitely leverage the resources that are out there. Reach out to a professional, a CPA like myself. I also have, hey babe. I also have a number of other CPAs and accounting professionals in my network that I can redirect people to. And so we're here to support. CPAs are an essential business. I mean, we are keeping these businesses afloat. We're advising the business owners on the moves that they need to make. And don't be afraid to reach out, and anything that we can do to help y'all along the way, most definitely. So I share a lot of small business tips and things on social media at Nick Winston CPA. My firm, the Winston CPA Group, is at Winston CPA Group. And a lot of people, I don't even know how people find my email, probably on my website, which is nickwinstonCPA.com. But if you are listening to this and you have follow-up questions, or you want to get help navigating through some of these resources, or figuring out what your business is going to look like going forward, feel free to email me, Nikki at nickwinstonCPA.com, NIKKI at NIKKWinstonCPA.com. More than happy to answer y'all questions. I also, Shannon, have a CARES Act guide that my firm created, which basically sums up a lot of the key points of the CARES Act. And it's really a memo that I created for my clients, for my friends, for my peers. So I'm happy to send that to you if you want to share it with your network. And if anybody is on the live or listening to this and they want a copy of that, send me an email and I am more than happy to share that.
Yes, absolutely. Definitely send that to me and I'll shoot it out to everyone that, everyone in my network, in my database, everyone that I can think of. I think that's going to be super, super helpful. Okay. So you guys have a way of getting in contact with Nikki. Okay. If you missed that information, just reach out to me. I'll get you in contact with her if you have any further questions. Please do not ask me because I am not a CPA. Yeah. I am not a money professional. I am a realtor, a real estate agent. I can definitely answer all of your questions about that, but do not ask me. I'll send you the resource, I'll send you any resources that Nikki sends to me. I'll make sure I send those to you, but I'm going to just send you to her, okay? That's just the way it is. So if you want to get in touch with me,
that's
my
totally
Instagram
fine.
and Facebook
totally
pages are Shannon. My information is Shannon at Shannon Ellis and Associates. That's my email. If you want to catch me on Instagram and Facebook, it's Shannon Ellis and Associates. You can send me a DM. Okay. I'm always available. So if there is nothing further, Nikki, thank you so much for all of this wonderful information. I really appreciate you taking out time to just go over this program with us and give us a better understanding. Thank you so much. You have a great evening. Glad to do it.
Thank you for the invitation and have a great evening. Absolutely. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Yes, we will. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.